So I would like to welcome everybody to the Base conference. And I've been watching, yesterday I wasn't able to watch, but today I was watching it this morning. And it was very interesting to see so many diverse people joining the event and talking about their scaling up experience and sharing their stories where we all can learn from it. Today we're going to talk about broadening our lens. I have my host later on to introduce you to our amazing ladies and gentlemen who I thought first he was half French, but he's 100% French. So that will be one topic that we have to think about. So I will start with Julia, as she is from Arctic Russia. She came to the Netherlands 8 years ago. And she came here while it was a project done by Shell, which she was working in. And later on, she became an entrepreneur. And I would like to ask her to introduce herself a bit so that we can then know who she is. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you very much, Eric. I'm very, very happy to be here, and very thrilled to have this panel with all of you guys, and hopefully we're going to make it very interesting. So indeed, I come from Russia Arctic region, and I worked with the Arctic team of Shell. But at the moment, I'm a co-founder of the think tank AlterContacts, think tank for sustainable development, and we are working on an initiative called Lockdown Economy. So it started during the pandemic, and our mission is to help all the micro and small business owners and self-employed professionals to overcome the hardships of pandemic. We facilitate the social dialogue and allow them the forum to exchange their ideas and response on how they dealt with the pandemic, with the lockdown, with social distancing, how they're keeping their business alive. And basically, that's the initiative that went from one person and one idea to now a team of 20 people, volunteers, and we're reaching thousands of people already. But of course, hopefully after this panel and in the future, we will be reaching more. So lockdowneconomy.org, that's the first promo, and that's what we're working on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I heard you're joining in from Amsterdam, so it's also a diverse team where some of us are joining from Amsterdam and other ones are joining from Haarlem, which is not that much far away from here. My basically hometown also, that where I live. So I would like to also make the bridge here to Liselore. She's a research director at, I have to say it correctly, ScaleUp Nation, without an S yet. So because I was corrected, that will be the next step, nations. So I would love to introduce you and welcome you from Haarlem. And please introduce yourself, Liselore. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So I'm Liselore Havermans. I'm the research director at ScaleUp Nation. And what we really aim for at ScaleUp Nation is really to help impact scale-ups grow. And we support these organizations throughout their journey, because also we've seen from our own research that only 0.4% of startups manage to actually scale. It's like, so they can use all the support they can get. And that's what we're here for. And I lead the research team that really tries to also make sure that everything we do is based upon insights from our own research, so that the way in which we support them can actually be the best we can do. And this year we are, what we're trying to do, so over the last few years, we've mainly been looking at how can you scale your organization, which is already hard enough in itself. But because we're really looking at impact scale up, so organizations that combine profit with impact, such as the one that you saw yesterday for Tony Chocolonely's, right? We're also really this year focusing on how can you scale your impact, not just scale your organization, but how can you scale your impact, and really looking at the trailblazers that go beyond just growing through their own sales, but also really trying to change an entire industry by doing something extra, like lobbying, like licensing their technology to their competitors, like raising awareness, so that really this change can be broader than themselves.
Thank you very much. That was exactly what also we spoke about it, and this is the right panel to talk about it. So we're going to talk absolutely, because we had a discussion a bit before we went live. The impact externally and impact internally. That's a huge part of scaling up, and hopefully we're going to be able to share your experiences and your research, so then companies can 0.4%. of scaling the companies. I would like to go to my 100% French guests, Florent, where they basically bridge to them because you collaborated with each other. You were kind of a partner with each other. You did some projects with Liselore, and I would love to introduce you. And he's a co-founder of weGrow International. That's a very key one, international. And for the guests that I would like to mention that, so you can know how big the impact is. For some of us 10 years ago, you might not remember what you did, but Florent was one of the early stage partners with Zalando, where they basically started together, and now they're a massive company. So then you have an idea how they can help to internationalize your company so you can scale up internationally. Florent, welcome, and I would like to ask you to further introduce yourself, and
Sure.
then we're going to make a nice talk about it.
Okay, great. Well, pleased to be here. Bonjour à tous. I'm French. I've lived in and worked in 8 countries between Germany, UK, Italy, Singapore, Morocco, Finland, and some others. I love this topic. How do you connect cultures together? How do you create business going from one market to another, and you actually scale into new markets? Indeed, I was the first international partner of Zalando when they started to go to new markets. That was the Netherlands. It was a huge success from day one, and then we helped them to roll out into new markets. And basically, I think, as Liselore, you mentioned it very clearly, the 0.4% also got really our attention with my co-founder, Gernot. We were like, this is insane. And when we look at what are the reasons behind this figure that is only so low, internationalization is always an area where companies break their teeth on. And we decided, okay, well, we have so much experience, so much know-how on how to do this, that we want to make use of it for the startup founders and the scale-ups that are actually growing into new markets. And this is what we do. We help companies to understand, okay, where should they go? Because the world is very large and you need to focus. Are you actually ready as an organization to grow into new markets? If not, what are you missing? And when you decide to go to France, to Germany, or to the UK, or wherever, how do you do this to limit your risk, but also create profitable growth and sustainability? So there are a number of steps that you need to do, and we decided to set up weGrow with the idea that we don't do this ourselves, but we have a community of experts all around Europe that can bring those insights. If you go to Germany, okay, think about it from a German perspective, not from a Dutch or French perspective, and basically that's what we do.
Thank you very much for your introduction. As the topic of today is broadening your lens, we will start from first with 0.4%, which is a very crucial one. So that means that there are so much companies left out from this train that is already gone, and there are so less companies that are making a unicorn status. So, Liselore, can you explain why the companies are not being able to be a part of 0.4%? Why can we not increase it to 1%?
I think we can. I think we're all here trying for it, right? So let's aim for that. But I think why it's not happening yet is because I think a big part of the reason is that a scale-up is just something fundamentally different from a startup. It's not just a matter of adding a bit more of the same to it. It's really a matter of going through a full transformation. It becomes a different animal when it becomes a scale-up. And maybe what helped you as a startup won't necessarily help you as a scale-up. So I think that is part of the reason why it is so tricky to do, because it is such a fundamental process. And it's just like, of course, as an entrepreneur, you're taking risks. You don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into. And there's so much uncertainty going on, and you'll have to think about so many different elements, even in our own model, because we've been doing research to try and really get at what are the success factors. So what really distinguishes a startup from a scale-up? and we found 20, and that is in itself already a bit like, oh no, now we have to tell these people that there are 20 different things that they have to be really good at. And then Florent comes in to talk about internationalization, and that's one of the elements, but that's just 1 out of 20. Like, how can you expect a small team like that? Because when we're talking about scale-ups, we're talking between 10 and 100 FTE, so employees. How can you expect them to do all of that, right? So that's why we're also really trying to now narrow down on what are your priorities, really focusing on, we've developed a scan so that people can also really figure out, like, on those 20, how are they scoring and what is it that should be their priority right now? And hopefully with all of that type of work, we can maybe even go beyond the 1%, right?
So 20, that's a huge number. I thought it was like 6 or 7 factors that it's going to be make it scalable. Basically what I spoke with different unicorn companies and the CEOs of them, that what I came around 5 huge things that it's impact, but if you make it 20, that's much more difficult. So in 2018, I have run a full marathon in Valencia, and it took me a lot of training to do the 42 kilometers running, especially the last kilometer. It was like, because you were seeing the 900 meter, 800 meter, everybody shouting like, come on, Eric, you can do it. There is the end goal. But I was like crying because of the pain, and I was crying because of the finish line is there. So it was a joy and happiness and pain and all together. But being able to finish, so being able to be a unicorn or 0.4%, you have to start with the small steps. So my first question will be, what are the first 2 steps that you can do before we go to 20? So what are the first 2 steps that the companies have to do to scale up?
Yeah. So, well, first to respond to your finish line, of course, once you've grown to a scale up, that's not the finish line, right? That's sort of the new start. So unfortunately, it's not sort of like, let's give it one more push and then we're done with this, because probably you're in it not because you want to be done with it, but because you want it to continue. But I think in order to start, like, one of the clusters that we have in terms of success factors are also around scale-up DNA. So really, what should already be in your core that makes it work? And just one of the things is also, very simply, a great market, right? Is this really something that can scale? Are people waiting for it? Are you starting to have really delighted customers that you're really adding that thing that they're craving for? And is it not just for this tiny market, but would you be able to bring it to a bigger market than that? And I think one thing that you can also already start considering is, when you're in your founding team, usually what you need in order to really make it grow is make sure that you have a management team of at least 3 people, so that it's not just this one charismatic figure at the top doing all of it, but you really carry it together, and you also bring in, and I think this is also one of your favorite topics, Eric, of diversity into that, because of course you need those different perspectives in order to really go that extra mile, and not just have like only a single-minded focus, but really also be able to critically look at it with each other.
Absolutely agree with you. So one of the things that I realized in the last 3 years, if you hire people that you like, then it's not the right fit in a company. So you have to have this diverse team where you can clash with each other, but you have a huge vision where the GPS is very clear where you want to go. But you have to have this, how do you say this, that you can complement each other with some soft skills and technical skills and etc. So I agree with you with the co-founders, like you have to have a management team of, I believe, minimum of 3, 4 will be also a good one, so that you can diversify everything. So you're looking at from an impact perspective that has an effect on commercial perspective. So I would like to now make a bridge to Julia. She is focusing on a nonprofit organization, and she wants to make nonprofit scalable with 0 budget. So you have to think about what the opportunities are. I will not fill that much for you, Julia. So please explain, how do you want to achieve that, and what kind of research you already did that you believe that you're going to be able to do that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Eric. And to respond to Liselore comment about the fact that there's a market, it's true. Even a nonprofit has to start from a demand. And I think that's the first thing that I've established at the very beginning, because the micro and small businesses and self-employed professionals actually comprise half of the productive population of the earth. And they all entered lockdown in the pandemic, and they all were severely hit. Well, majority. I mean, there are definitely success cases that were built on digital technology, but there's every fifth small firm was on the verge of bankruptcy in the first 3 months. I mean, that's a pretty serious diagnosis to what we're experiencing. And of course, when the lockdown happens, it took away our opportunities to network, to ask for brief advice in a coffee meeting, in a here and there, when you can just hear one thing that sparks your thinking, but no, it's gone. And at that time there was no really alternative to that, to get in that peer-to-peer learning. So that's what I started from, and basically I interviewed 28 different entrepreneurs from all around the world. So we had 14 countries represented from 4 continents, and each shared the same type of information, but every story was different, and everyone had their own ideas on what they want to do. And then we saw the response from the audience to those stories, and it was amazing to see how inspiring that was, how educating, and that they wanted to see more of that. And the idea of scaling it, it came a little bit like a flow, because the original plan was pretty simple. I had all the processes automated for myself. I had everything documented properly. So I think that's another big element, like Liselore said, that you have to have it in your DNA, and you have to start building your startup in a way to scale up if you want to get there, right? So basically what happened is that I realized that I needed more helping hands. I started looking for volunteers, and then I started getting volunteers who believed in the mission from all over the world. And then they say, well, let's brainstorm. And we brainstormed to having a local editions of these same interviews. And now we're doing it in Mexico, in the region Yucatan, in Spanish, specifically with entrepreneurs from Yucatan. And we have an amazing response from local entrepreneurs. We have like over 1,000 views per night. Per evening. And that's how we are now going into Nepal, Kenya, and Germany, and Spain, and France. So where the volunteers pop up, where they feel like they can take this mission forward, I give them all the toolkit, and I train them and onboard them, and we take it to that country.
One of the things that I highly believe is how to motivate a voluntarily based company, so which is a nonprofit usually. More tough to scale up a volunteer nonprofit organization than when you pay a person that there is an accountability in that part. So it's that you are going from 0 to international to 1,000 views an evening, and going from different South American countries. It's an amazing process. So I'm very curious on how you're going to be able to reach that in 18 months. So what will be your next phase? So one of the questions will be additionally is, how do you see yourself in 18 months post-COVID?
I think at the moment, the focus is very much on the real time, because we are still in a very early stage. We're still only 4 months old. The big milestone was that the United Nations has recognized this initiative as an acceleration action towards sustainable development goals in response to the COVID-19. So that is a big medal sort of behind us that is keeping us going. But it's too early to talk about 18 months, because we have to still we are nonprofit, but there are costs. And even though you have volunteers helping with all the work, there's still costs around it. And there's still people who need, basically I am running and training volunteers. So that's also, so the operations are not funded yet. We are actively looking for European funds, for sponsors, for maybe some philanthropists who just believe in it. and hopefully we can make it past December. But I think by December we have to find some money. But we take pride in not charging entrepreneurs for featuring them, because it brings them a lot of visibility, and we do it absolutely for free. And we do not charge anyone for the knowledge that we share. So 18 months is too early to say. Let's hope that in 3 months we have the funding from one of the organizations.
Thank you very much. I'm very curious, and I would love to follow you guys basically on your journey. And one of the things that I would like to really mention is that Base Conference is going much more in depth on scaling up. So I will highly recommend to join, to go on social media and click on a following button, which is, I will come up later on that part with following buttons, but basically follow them, because you're going to be able to learn from other speakers every time and then scale up your business. So from 4 months, I would like to go to more than a decade company, which Florent started. One of the things that is still in my head, Florent, because you were one of the first partners with international partner with Zalando, and I assume, this is an assumption, I assume that you learned, and based on that, you know what are the key factors of scaling up from your perspective. Can you briefly talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it starts with the product market fit, right? In your home market, if you're very successful there, okay, then it's time to go outside. The question is where. And a lot of companies think, okay, yeah, let's go to the big markets, because this is where we will capture most of the opportunities. It's an important aspect, but that should not be the only one. The two important aspects are, okay, which skills do you already have that you can leverage from your company? So maybe you have super excellent people in certain regions and so on. But also the other aspect that is really important to look at is where is the most need for your solution. If you sell B2B, maybe you have a very, very specific solution that a lot of companies are looking for, and that research is so important, because that will determine, your roadmap in terms of focus and energy that you're going to deploy. And I don't believe in let's go and conquer the world, or let's conquer Europe all at once. If you do, well, it will bring a lot of challenges to your company. So it's better to focus and clearly define where is your target market, have a very, very in-depth understanding of that target market, let's say the UK or France. You think about it from the perspective of the target market, where you go, and basically understand how the culture and how your customers want to be served, to basically not change your product, but tweak your story around your product and maybe change it slightly to the needs of the target market where you go. If you are able to do this as a process within the organization, then you're going to learn how to be successful into that, let's say, target market, and you can learn how to do this again and again and again. And I think the companies that have the most learning capability to do this are the most successful today in the world. So because one market or one country or one hub will give you specific challenges. If you are able to answer to those challenges, then you can multiply with your current offering in other markets. And that's the companies that did extremely well are able to do this. So Zalando is one of them, but many others as well.
If you want to scale and you want to go international, you have to understand the cross-cultural elements. So the skills you have to learn. I mean, selling in Africa is totally different. Selling in Asia is totally different compared to Western Europe and US. And even in Western Europe, I mean, in Belgium and the Netherlands, there's a different way of approaching with the clients and how to communicate with them. We are in the Netherlands much more direct. We can just say anything that we want, and we are more an informal level. And if you go to UK or to Belgium, you will see much more in a formal level. So you have to understand the key elements of when you do business internationally. So one of the things that I invest in different projects and worldwide. So one of the things is in Asia, Eurasia, and in Africa, in agricultural projects and infrastructure. But what I realized is when I was talking to real estate people, the key thing of real estate is location, location, location. So you have to find the right location. And with the scaling up a business, what I've realized is validation, validation, validation. Without knowing what your clients are willing to pay, not just saying, yeah, I like your idea, but they have to pay you, then you can validate, then you can say, this is a market fit. Because one of the key things that I realized is without the validation, you cannot start up your company. You can pump a lot of money in it, but if you don't get any feedback that people are willing to pay for it, even if it's 10 euros, then you don't have a product, because the market doesn't give an F about your ideas if it doesn't fit to their needs.
Yes.
So with broadening your lenses, and I would like to talk more now. So we know what the scalabilities are from external factors. We know how to go international. We know how to do it from how to say it, from non-profit. So from 4 months that you're going to be, that you have been able to reach international level and a recognition from the United Nations, that's a chapeau, because not that many companies are that successful in the 4 months. So now, focusing on broadening, how do we make it much more successful from the core of the company? Those are the hard factors, but we have to focus also on the soft factors. One of my core beliefs are diversity in the company itself. It has to represent what the market is also doing. So, Liselore, you made the research on impact on external. I assume you also did an impact on internal research. So can you briefly explain what the results of your research were?
Well, so one of the things I think is core when it comes to diversity is also, of course, how do you hire, and what Julia also already talked about, how do you onboard? Because with hiring, you're not there yet. You could hire the best person, but if you don't do proper onboarding, you still have nothing, right? They can still get totally lost. And last year, we also did a study called Hiring to Scale, in which we really try to focus on what does it mean to hire when you're in this transformation. Because actually it's not just about getting the right people in, it's really about the hiring process, and onboarding process is also really about transforming your organization, getting the right people in to do that, so that you know, sort of have a sense of where are we going, who would we need for it. And you really have to, in that sense, also make sure that the proposition that you have, not your offer, but like what you offer to your employees, your future employees, that you also know that it's resonating with the right people. Because quite often what you also see is that, especially in the startup world, especially in the tech world, the way in which people advertise for vacancies is in a very male-oriented way, like with and it's in the tiny things, right? The type of words that you use can already trigger some people to think like, yeah, that's me, and others, like women or whoever else, to think like, oh, no, that's not me. Like, I won't even apply to this. So really making sure that you also test out, like, how are we bringing out our message, and is it resonating with all the right audiences, or is it just resonating with us as white male founders, which is still quite often the case. So really make sure that you test that, right? And try to make sure that you have a structured process in, so that it's not just that you're amplifying the unconscious biases that we all have. Like, we all have unconscious biases, but making sure that in our selection processes, we can actually hire the best people that in a way that we have thought carefully about what the best would be, that it's not just like click with the founder, like, oh, we're so alike, ha ha ha, come on board. And as I said, really doubling down on onboarding, making sure that once people are in, that you know that they will find a home within your organization, they will know how to find their way, and that they can add their value. And usually that value will partly also be adding a new perspective. And a new perspective can be so scary, right? Because you thought you knew what you were doing, you were all on the same track, and then you bring in this new person and they're saying like, no, this doesn't make any sense at all. And at first you might think like, oh no, we hired the wrong person. Like, they continuously go against our thinking, but maybe sometimes that's exactly what you need. So also really trying to figure out like, what is this person really saying? And not just thinking like, oh, annoying, but really trying to go against, like, above and beyond that, and trying to see like, what are they seeing that we are not seeing at the moment?
That's funny that you say that, because everything goes on a communication. If the communication, mismatch, then we're going to make an assumption. It's going to take their own project and then just go. It's going to be not beneficial for a company. So I highly agree what you say. And one of the reasons that companies that I started in SaaS is we created a voice AI port and out. Before to do that, we validated 50 if this was a tool that might be useful for them. So that was one of the key things that we saw. And looking at it, I have realized that being able to create a company that is most probably focusing on a scaling up, it has to be internally diverse. And one of the reasons that is where we created a space that we explicitly were looking for female co-founders, and now we have more of co-founders. And I see something is going wrong. Do you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, we do hear you, but I think your connection is not so great, and that's why we might have lost your video.
If I can, in the meantime, if I can add to Liselore's point about
yes, please.
You mentioned that there are people who come in and they have their own ideas about how to do things, and it's not about the click, it's about hiring the right fit. With volunteering, of course, we have our own challenges because, for example, we don't have the luxury of actually really choosing. If people come, it's almost 90% that I will say yes, there is something to do together. But they sometimes want their own idea about what they want to do for the project, and based on the positions that I published on idealist.org, where we registered as a nonprofit, and then we sit down to have a conversation, and then there's a language barrier sometimes, and then there is maybe not enough education, maybe too much education. So we always have to find a right fit for that person based on his abilities, his desires, his vision on what he's going to do or she's going to do after they participate with the project. So what is their motivation intrinsically to participate in that initiative? And I must say that from my superstar volunteers, I have a few that are really, really active. And I got one of the best ideas. So the scaling didn't come from me. I was in very much mindset, I need to do this and this and this. And then they said, well, it would be great if we had this and we had that. And then we brainstormed all together. And this is how local editions came up. And then we, of course, started introducing it. And my digital marketeer constantly comes up with different ideas of partnerships and, who I should reach out to, even though technically it's maybe not the digital marketing per se. But, they keep generating ideas. And, sometimes I have to say no, because there's just simply no strategically time for that. But very often they're really, really great ideas. So we have to be very open-minded.
Thank you very much, Julia, and thank you for taking it over. That my connection went something wrong from here. One of the things that I would like to also connect to with Florent is while I was saying about diversity internally and externally is important, where like focusing on a commercial perspective, but also internal team. I saw your reaction on nodding, and I believe that you agree on that based on your experience. So can you collaborate on that part? What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so diversity is also very much from different cultures, different nations, right? I always love when I go into a company when there are, a German co-founder, a French co-founder, and a head of sales that is Romanian. Then already, even if it's an early stage company or they just did Series A, they're going to be already capturing a lot of more opportunities than a monoculture company. So that's diversity is there's a lot to gain from this. The key is how to manage that diversity internally, and also to connect it to the market needs, as I was explaining. We use a lot the principles of the Havermans from the culture map, which is a must read if you are dealing with international. Let's say business in any way, to decode and navigate the different cultures, the Russian culture, the Dutch culture, the French, and so on, to give you kind of a way to understand how those cultures function, and say, okay, well, the Dutch, they are super straightforward. So when they say something, they really mean it. While the French, well, we have a certain degree, so it's not exactly, we don't say exactly what we mean, but you have to deduct it and so on. So those things are so fundamental when you are actually growing your company and suddenly you have offices, 5 offices worldwide. If you don't understand yourself within the company, then how can you actually serve the needs of your customers that are locally if you don't understand internally? So again, that capacity to learn how to cope with diversity within your organization and to push it back to the market needs and serve them in the right way is essential to be able to scale a bit further.
I agree with you on that part, absolutely. And I see one of the questions that it comes from Pamela Armstrong. Diversity has become a buzzword. That's true. A lot of companies are like, there are so many buzzwords now currently that we are using. But she's asking, like, can you each define your diversity in your cultures, businesses, and minds? So what? Can we all 3 of them, like we start with Liselore. Can you define that? What you mean with that? And then we'll end with Florent.
So I think what it is, what we see, at least in our research, the type of diversity that you really need is the type of diversity that brings different ways of thinking in, so that you really make sure that you can learn really fast, that you can see from different perspectives. And quite often that is also tied with actual diversity in terms of like marginalized groups and not just having white guys running around. But I think there's also, of course, a question of really how do you make sure that, and that I think is also more of a societal question, of how do you make sure that marginalized groups get to be represented everywhere and get the same opportunities that any of us get. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a very tricky thing to really make sure that it's always happening in these fast-moving environments. In which it's already, there's so much pressure on everyone to do well and to transform and to think about so many different things. But I think one of the key things there is really alterity. So that's an idea from social sciences of really being able to meet the other person where they are, not just from your own perspective, but really being able to step aside from your own way of looking and trying to step into their shoes and really trying to open up the space for the other, so that it's not like a confrontation, but it becomes more of a dance.
Yeah. Yep, I understand. So I'm very curious about how does that work in a non-profit environment.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and very good points, Liselore. I'm not going to repeat them because I'm very much in agreement with them, but I think I can add that, so in our organization, we basically look at it from the point of the SDG 8, which is Sustainable and Inclusive Economic Growth, and we try to be as inclusive as possible in a way that we're not just doing it for all different types of people, we are doing it together with all different types of people. So we have male and female, we have, 10 different nations in our volunteering team of 16 people, 20 people. And we had 14 different nations in the 28 interviews that we did in the initial series. Absolutely different cultural background, educational background, the level of the family wealth, or so to say, and the previous experience with business or with entrepreneurship, or some are still students, and some already passed their corporate lives and they entered entrepreneurship at a later stage in life. So I'm really trying to involve them all and together to get the best of what they want to offer, because they all come with their own ideas. So the best is to be diverse and inclusive is to just let them sort of shine in their own way, not try and impress some handbook that says you should not say this, you should do it just like that, you should always wear this. No, it's very much open-minded. We have the handbook of guideline on how to run the interview, basically what the questions you should ask and how to arrange that. But beyond that point, how you want to promote it, how you want to position yourself is all very much for them to decide.
Thank you very much. That's what that looking from an employee's perspective. That's a approach that I didn't hear before. So thank you very much for that. Florent, you already mentioned how you saw the diversity in the company. As Pamela asked, like, how do you see the cultural differences and the business differences and the minds of things? Because I have my own theory about it. I will add on later on, but can you please share your experience on that part?
Yes, I want to come back a step earlier.
Yep.
For us, what diversity means you have a different angle. You have and for example, when we look at people coming in our team, can we be challenged in a constructive way? And would this person add something new that we don't have? Obviously, we look at the different nations and so on. We're very international. We have many nationalities represented in our team, in our core team. And I think that's, if you have that sense of respect and sense of, hey, we are different, but we are the same, and we want to build the same, and let's look at it from a different angle and build the together. Then that's when you make, you move things from one to B. It's that respect and that's treasuring the cultural differences to make a bit to make the step further.
Yeah,
that's it.
Okay, I agree with all of you. That's one of the things, because you are all also focusing on diversity and scaling up, and you said that this has to be in your DNA. And if you start from a DNA, from the core, then you can basically scale up very, very fast. And one of the quotes that I will absolutely use that I've written down is, "You don't have to get ready if you stay ready." So if you are already ready from the beginning on, you don't have to work on like, hey, if I go now, I have to now focus on scaling up my company. Now I have to getting ready and etc. So be ready already, so you don't have to get ready. That's one of the things that I highly believe in it. There is another one that is coming from Pamela. I will ask that question just a bit later on. One of the core beliefs that we have in our company is no bullshit rules. This is what I've learned from Vicious Lakiani, who has an educational company that basically shares the philosophical thoughts. He says, if you have a bullshit rules, like because of my religion, I have to do these things in my company, or I am not allowed females, I don't like having a female in my as my manager. Those are the things that we don't want to have in our company. One of the companies that I really follow is a Netflix. Netflix has kind of no rules. It's based on a trust thing that you want in a company. As far as everything is based on trust. That's one of the cultures that I believe a lot of companies are using currently. One thing that I would like to put another angle based on the impact. Yesterday, just for today, I watched yesterday on Netflix, what was the name again? The Social Dilemma. Did one of you watch that? I know, Liselore, you didn't, because we were talking about it. Florent, did you see that?
My wife watched it, but I didn't watch
it. No worries. But what in the core it was, basically all the big tech companies like Google, social media companies, all of them are focusing to have us addicted to use these tools, at the same time making money of that. So, and Liselore, you began your talk having an impact, like having a right balance. Say, I'm proud of my company that we are not manipulating other people to buy products. So how do you see, guys, with broadening your lens on this one? And anybody can jump in.
Well, I'll start. I don't have particularly much to say because we're a non-profit company. So we are, by design, we're not selling anything. But still, because we are looking for funding, I approach different people. So I approach business angels, foundations, all sorts. And often they say, well, we can put this, we can close up the content that you're creating and we can put a price on it, or we can let them watch the first 3 minutes and then they have to pay to watch more. And this is where I have to say very strictly that this is not how we're going to do it, because right now, the world is going through one of the most dramatic moments that we will experience probably in our generation. And it's not the right time to try and, commercialize on that pain and on that disaster. Well, there are ways, of course, to create, if you create masks as a production company and you sell them, at a good price, that's reasonable. But if you create the content that can be delivered for free to everyone and really help and change lives and inspire and uplift in this moment, you cannot possibly, with a good heart, put a price on it. So those moments, they come up, and I think the way we're moving forward, and I'm very grateful for that, is we're collaborating with entrepreneurial organizations who have a bit of structure in their organizations to help us run the interviews at their own costs, and that's how we try to scale into more countries without compromising our values.
So could I latch on to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think so, and I fully understand that you don't necessarily want to commercialize your product, but I also, I wouldn't want to bring commercialization in sort of like the bad corner, because I think it's also a way of making sure that you can do it sustainably, because you can hold up your own pants and continue to do so, hopefully for a long time. And by doing that, by bringing in the money, do all of this good stuff. And I think you also are experiencing at the moment that you see, like, we really need to get some money coming in right now, otherwise this will have to stop. And so that's why I think also at ScaleUp Nation, we really focus, and not to say that it's not good to do it in a nonprofit way, but we really also try to make sure that those who do commercialize it, their good offer that will bring something to the world, that they actually manage to do that in a successful way so that they can continue to do it on and on. And to respond to Eric's question about impact, I think that the type of impact you're talking about from the social dilemma is mainly about sort of do no harm. And that's, I think, what also a lot of the conversation about impact is usually about corporate social responsibility, and really trying to make sure that all the bad stuff that all these organizations are doing, that it's minimized, right? And what we're talking about when we're talking about impact, it's really about positive societal impact. So really not just trying to minimize all the bad that you do, but really trying to add something to society that you think will really make it work, and then focus on that.
Yeah, got it. That's my approach was kind of different. Yeah, I agree with you, because on the social dilemma that I saw yesterday, it brought me a different way of looking to different companies, because we have this psychological triggers that we have, that we can trigger our clients, customers, to do some things that we want basically as a commercial company. Even though if you're not commercial, you have to have a paid client or paid something. You have to have an income, otherwise you're not going to be able to survive. Yeah. As you said, Liselore, you have to be able to pull up your pants and just eat and so you can function normally. I would like to add one question, which I love. This question is a bit longer than the previous one. Pamela, I wanted to add, the dance relationship is the key. So thank you for that, Liselore. So that was like a compliment for you. And one of the things like dance, and I love dancing, and one of the things that I always see when you go to a club, there are some people that cannot dance, especially when you go to a networking event where a kind of 60, 70 plus ages are dancing. It's like it's like they're having a stroke. It's a kind of dance. So that's so basically with that in mind, she's basically asking, what are the next questions? So that question is, how can you get scared people to dance, like to not care about how other people think? And so how can you motivate that so they can speak out, especially minority women, because they tend to come from different cultures. They cannot speak up to their seniors. And it has also to do with masculine and hierarchical culture. When you go to Africa, you're not allowed to talk to your elderly, senior, and etc. So how can we peel that off and make it as a to everyone being able to say what they're have in their minds?
Mm-hmm. And that is the trickiest question of all, right? Because I'm immediately thinking of about a year ago, it wasn't in a ScaleUp environment, but it was in a big project. And there was also a lot of tension in the management team of that project, and there were a very dominant group and a group that sort of kept a bit more quiet. And what we did there is really we sat with them for 2 full days with 2 externals, so me and one a consultant, to really try and see how can we get people to talk with each other in a slightly different way, do a lot of social exercises, really get also, that's where the whole also idea of the dance, like let's continue to dance together, where that really started for me to get out of the literature that I've been reading and really get into the practice. But that is, of course, not something that you can just do every day and that will help with everyone. It was even there was only a few people that were involved, and then hopefully that you spread sort of this message from there. But I also know from reading a lot of the diversity literature that the deeper you dive into that literature, the more depressed you get, because there's just so much stuff still going on, and it's so tricky to tackle any of this. So I think it's really just a matter of everyone every day trying a little bit harder to just open up to others. Yeah. But that won't solve immediately the whole problem, and I don't think any of us can today.
No, I understand. So that will be a bridge to Florent. So as a man, as the masculine world where a lot of people are looking differently to us nowadays in 2020, so we have to be more open and being able to accept critics and everything. So how do you approach to your colleagues and people that work with you? So how do you let them make it much more easier to communicate with you?
Yeah, basic human principle. We have one mouth, 2 ears. So you need to listen. You can listen to the music, sure. But you need to, basically, if you really take the time to listen and to absorb, you're already in a respecting mode, and you create a dialogue. If you just send, then you won't be able to capture how your message is received. And that is a fundamental skill that we need to have as human beings everywhere we are in the world. You know, if you go into a country that you don't speak the language, well, let's say you go to Japan. I don't speak Japanese. I love Japan. I have a great friend in Japan.
Same here.
But how am I able to communicate? By watching the body language, listening very, very carefully to the signals that I received, not by just talking. And that is...
No, I understand. I would just like to, we have to keep in mind that we have only 4 minutes left. So that's the crucial question that I want to answer for Pamela. That's when we listen, but how can we empower people from minority women that they can still be free to talk to you, for instance, like to talk to the management? It doesn't matter if it's a male or female, but like if you have a team meeting, there will be some of people that are introverts. So how do you trigger them to talk? How do you trigger them to say what they're on their mind?
It sounds maybe stupid, but I never had the challenge too much. Because it's also about the respect, and you need to ask them questions and listen to the answers. So it's paying attention and listen. Maybe Julia, you have a different perspective, but
well, I agree with both of what you said. In my personal experience, I think it's from the beginning. You know, I say the only rule is open communication, because you know, we are far away from each other, and if I don't know how you feel and how you're doing on the task, then you know, we're not helping anyone. And then I just give them some example of something that went really wrong because somebody didn't communicate with me, because now I have those, unfortunately. But those examples really help them to get in the perspective, you know, of how they should not be behaving if they want a different experience for themselves. And I think, you know, to keep it, you know, sort of formal, but very, very open channel, and keep your hands on the pulse, because, you know, these are people, they have their emotions, they have their challenges, and at least every week I have to check with everyone. So how they're doing on everything, are they still happy? And yeah, that's the only way for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The value that I think I now bring from all of these different answers is also really, it's in the super simple things, like are you able to ask open questions and like listen to yourself every day? Because most of us, we're so bad at asking open questions and really also with an open attitude. And I think that is a really, really big key.
And it starts with self-awareness, right? It starts with all of us, the four of us. If you can bring that self-awareness to the whole team, then everybody take a step forward and we can start those conversations.
I agree. There's one thing that I would like to add on this one. One person said, I think, if you point a finger to another person, there are 3 other fingers pointing back to you. So focus first on yourself and then go and ask somebody else to do something for you. I would love to thank you all, Liselore from Haarlem, Julia from Amsterdam, and Florent from a phone booth from Amsterdam Central. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for Pamela Armstrong to asking the question, because those are where basically the diversity comes in, because we have to make it, deconstruct and make it like step by step in a chunk, so then it's much easier to move further. I would like to ask again, people, if you want to be ready, so you don't have to get ready, please follow Base Conference, so then you can basically learn from every entrepreneurs, every scale-ups experiences. And I would love to end today's this panel talk. Thank you very much. I would like to say much love and have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful sunny weekend, because those are the weekends that we still remember in the Netherlands, because we have so little nice weekends, sunny weekends. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers.